Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, joined here by my colleague and co-host, the one, Mr. Brian E. Roach. Mr. Brian, how are you doing today at this start of a lovely week?
So I'm glad that we could have this opportunity to jump on to talk about what is the most critical and important piece of information of the day, which is my wife thinks that this is getting too long. And so I need some backup here. Should I be trimming this beard? Should I be letting it do the ZZ Top thing and get all the way, down to the belly and whatnot? What do I need to do? She's unhappy with it. She says that there's too much food that gets stuck in it, and it grosses her out, even though I keep it fairly clean.
Is she getting something?
That is why we're on today, right? That's why we decided to have this show, right? That's the important topic we needed to discuss. Am I wrong? Is something else going on that I have maybe been completely unaware of? I don't know.
Are you living under a rock, Brian? Is the woman getting leftovers from your dinner, but via your beard?
No, the dog might be, but she's not.
Hey, ZZ Top over there, sharp dressed man, the Steel City Underground T-shirt today. Somehow, the football fashion gods have us both. We both did this, not intentionally. We just jump on, and it's like
completely an accident.
Got the same hat, kind of going with the different monochrome colors. I don't know, Brian. There might be something going on because we were here at the beginning of a week.
I heard this little rumor, maybe.
You know what?
I know
what it was. We were going to talk. The fans wanted us to talk about like this non-football stuff because there's nothing going on. Oh, wait a minute. My phone probably died this morning because there was football. There was quite a bit of football news.
There sure was.
Did we not say the last episode, this isn't your granddaddy's or daddy's Pittsburgh Steelers and the way they operate? Holy cow, man. Now, let me tell you, I'm going to feel I got a little bit of a sad panda face here because my Minkah Fitzpatrick jersey has now been made null and void for a guy who's under contract for another year or two. I thought if anybody was safe on this roster, nobody's safe. Apparently, let's boil down to very basics of things in case someone is coming across this and they don't know what happened, because at first it was like, wow, holy crap, the Steelers traded with the Dolphins for Jalen Ramsey. And then like a couple minutes later, it was like, WTF, the Minkah Fitzpatrick has been traded. And it's like, oh, well, they're getting Jonnu Smith from the Miami Dolphins now too, which have been rumored for a while. And there's a swap of some draft picks. So that's a whole lot of stuff to digest that all happened within like, I don't know. You got the Tom Pelissero, you got Ian Rappaport, you got Adam Schefter, you got all these like insider gurus, and the posts, the tweets, whatever you call them now, they were just flying. My phone starts blowing up. I swear to you, I think I had to plug it back in and charge it. I had all kind of people start blowing up my phone, like, dude, what? Whoa, like all this crazy stuff. We're gonna break this down because there's a lot to chew here, and I don't know how to feel about this on the surface. On one hand, it was like, oh, Jalen Ramsey comes across. And I'm like, I almost had like kind of a gut feeling that could have happened. But then sending Minkah, I'm like, but then you get Jonnu Smith back in the deal here too. And it's like, okay, the Steelers have cap room. They got all this money to spend. They don't have a lot of mega players that they're throwing money at. Aaron Rodgers is signed for $13 million. We say all this stuff all the other time. And then you get rid of another guy that's one of the top, or was one of the top paid players at his position. Definitely a top 5 on the Steelers roster, Minkah Fitzpatrick. But wow, I mean, people like kind of turned on Minkah really quick on this trade, right? And I'm thinking to myself, the reason you don't always hear his name in the headlines is he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And I think teams tend to avoid him. But there's people that have been trying to shoot holes in that recently.
Yes, there are. Look, I think the bottom line is when there was Minkah magic going on, everybody loved Minkah. When Minkah becomes especially at the pay scale that he was being paid at, a very quiet contributor, where there's not a lot of splash happening. The interceptions weren't coming anymore. His name is not getting called because he's not making, those splash impact plays, but he's just being a constant, consistent performer. You overlook him a little bit, and we will see because maybe the writing was on the wall for Minkah. Maybe when this contract was up, that was going to be it anyway. There's a lot of movement here that tells me the Steelers are trying to make themselves relevant for this upcoming season, when I just don't see that happening. But hey, I mean, that's their job, right? That's their job, to try and put themselves in the best position to win. So they're definitely making some moves. This one has left me a little, as you said, I'm a little unsure how I feel about it at this point. Not enough time to digest and take a deep dive into what Jalen Ramsey's going to bring, where he's going to play. Is he going to be the slot guy? Is he going to, be a boundary guy? What's he going to do? And I realize he's 30, but that's, people are going, he's only 30. 30 is about that age where they start to drop off, So I get it. I think it's he's only got 1 year left on his contract, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a short-term rental for a year. I don't know how that differentiates between what they would get in savings next year off of Minkah's deal not being on the books. There's a lot of stuff to digest that I just haven't had a chance. So I'm a little suspect of this one at the moment.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Just to answer your question on the Minkah contract, Minkah's 29, so he's starting to get there now. Safeties might play a little older, as you said, or we've said many times on the show. Corners, wide receivers, 30 and 31, that's when you've hit the peak, and now it starts to come on the backside. And we got Darius Slay, it's like 33, I think 34, signed in the off season. But the Minkah contract, real quick, and we'll talk about how this maybe factors in with Slay and everything else. Big Minkah fan, always will be. I tend to forget that he wasn't originally a Steeler. That's how highly I think of him. He feels like almost like an original guy that they had drafted. I had wanted them to draft him. His base salary for this year is $15.5 million, 17.6 in 2026. So that's a sizable chunk of cash that's coming off about $33+ million. That easily accounts for the two men that are coming in as part of this trade from the other direction. And most of his money was not paid ahead either. There was a decent payout last year with a $21.3 million cap hit. But in the previous years, his base salary, $4 million, $1 million, about $8 million a season. And then the 21.3 would have been 22.3 and 24.4 in for this upcoming season, and then the following season. So just talking about Minkah and his usage, 2023 was a little bit of a down year for him. He had missed 7 games and portions of others. He did play in 10 games. All 10 were starts. But no interceptions that year, and only one last year in 17 games. Only one in the last 27 appearances for the Pittsburgh Steelers. 3 passes defensed in 2023. 4 passes defensed last season. That's kind of a far cry from when he was an All-Pro in 2022, where he had the 6 interceptions, 11 passes defensed. Also 96 total combined tackles the year before that in 21. He had led the Pittsburgh Steelers with 124 combined tackles. So tackling machine, playing at or near the line of scrimmage. And I think that's what we're going to see with Jalen Ramsey. I think you hit the nail on the head already. I was actually talking with Flash, not available today, but very excited. Jalen Ramsey is one of his favorite players of all time. So he's just getting, his wish list right now kind of checked off before he joins us back on the show. But he brought up an excellent point talking with Zach Celedonia, one of our other hosts here, when he's finally going to get off of the summer break or wherever he's at. But Brian, he makes a good point. He goes, look what they do with Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson wasn't always on the field all of the time. So if Darius Slay's not on the field all of the time, maybe Ramsey bumps outside. Maybe Ramsey stays up near the line of scrimmage. And Ramsey's a tackling machine himself. He's not afraid to get his nose dirty. So I'm really wondering, we've seen in years past, I've always said, the Steelers, their defensive tendencies, we didn't see a lot of usage out of Mike Hilton. That's why he was goodbye, right? And then they started to bring in some different players, formerly safeties, usually like an Arthur Millette. They tried this with Terrell Edmonds, didn't work last year. You've got some guys who could play hybrid like Cam Sutton, who did see a little more snaps last season than a Beanie Bishop on the defensive side of the football, right? When you're talking about that, Beanie Bishop, sometimes out on the field 50% of the time. I said sometimes 30% of the time, depending on injuries and availability of other players. Hilton was playing 30-40% of the snaps when we're talking about the Steelers and we're talking about a nickel defense. When you bring Jalen Ramsey into this picture, and for the amount of money he's playing, if he's playing as a nickel corner, do you really think that Jalen Ramsey's only going to play like half a game? I think they're going to expect him to be on the field maybe close to 100% of the time, whether he's on the boundary or whether he slides in for an older Darius Slay, where if you manage his snaps, Slay really we haven't seen a decrease yet with Slay's play, even though we're talking about Father Time. Pat Pete, we already kind of had an inkling of that when he was with the Minnesota Vikings, and then coming to the Steelers. So this is going to be kind of interesting because I think you could replace a lot of what Minkah did with Jalen Ramsey, as sans from he's not going to be playing center fielder.
Yeah, that was my initial question and thought was how much of what they ask Ramsey to do is going to be what Minkah was doing. I think it's safe to say, the corner room got a little better, but I can't view this any other way. The safety group got weaker. And maybe not even just a little weaker. I don't know. It depends on what some of the other folks that they brought in end up being able to contribute. But if Ramsey is on the field almost all the time and is taking up the workload that Minkah was taking up, playing slot or playing close to the line, maybe it works out. Look, I'm sure they've got a plan. It just isn't 100% crystal clear to me what that plan is yet. We'll see as training camp approaches and we start to see how this group really starts to work together. We'll get a better understanding of what they're trying to accomplish, I think.
Training camp's going to be really interesting, right? We went from having probably no excitement a few weeks ago to Rodgers signing, to these various trades, to, now you're going to see Ramsey in a Steelers uniform, Jonnu Smith in a Steelers uniform. I'm hearing Ramsey, well, the trade details, of course, Ramsey and Smith and a 2027 fifth rounder.
Yep.
For the Dolphins. Seventh rounder from the Dolphins for a Steelers fifth rounder in 2027 and Minkah Fitzpatrick. So basically the Dolphins are moving up the draft a little bit and getting Fitzpatrick. The Steelers are still getting an extra pick, but in 27, not in 26, where they're going to have up to 26, or not 26. They could, maybe in theory, before this is all said and done, to draft Sandy. I'm sorry. In 26, they will have maybe up to a dozen draft picks. So yeah, they're going to still have some ammunition there. They may need all of those picks depending on some of these one-year deals, some of the older players that are there. We'll get back to Ramsey. Well, some of Ramsey's stats too. Okay. So Ramsey, he's had 5 interceptions over the last 27 games. He played 10 games as well for the Dolphins in 2023 and then all 17 last season. He made 60 combined tackles as a corner. That's pretty impressive. For the most part. And then passes defense 11 last year in a full season. He had 5 the year before. He's been an all-pro 3 times in his career. I don't know, man. It's like you said, the corner room has definitely improved, but with Jalen Ramsey now there, who's not going to play the amount of time out there? Are they just going to roll with all 3 corners? Are we not going to see a nose tackle on the field ever? It was like, oh, they add Ramsey and this is like unbeatable, but then you lose Minkah Fitzpatrick and you scratching your head and you're like, mate, were you reading tea leaves? That's what some people are saying. They brought in Juan Thornhill and I'm like, I never saw Juan Thornhill as starting. There could be another move somewhere. I don't know.
It won't surprise me if this isn't it, because Like as you said, we say the cornerback room has improved, right? But again, we're dealing with, other than Joey Porter, we're dealing with guys who are on that cusp age-wise where, skills may start to drop off. We may, I don't want to be a pessimist, but, there's certainly a reasonable chance that come the season, we find that the corner room actually didn't improve. But I'll stay optimistic and say the way it looks is that it has improved. We'll have to see what happens with Juan Thornhill. Yeah, I never thought when they brought Juan Thornhill, it was never like, oh, well, there's Minkah's ticket out of the place.
No, that is Casey's.
Who would have ever thought that, right?
Yeah, it's Casey's replacement because Casey had gotten older and Casey's getting suspended for,
He ain't mine's replacement. He's used replacement.
That's the old Martavis Bryant, Sammy Coates exchange right there. Let's see, Jalen Ramsey. He has, it's going to be interesting. His contract actually runs through 2028. That was currently with the Miami Dolphins. So I don't know if that's been ripped up or changed. This was the latest thing that I have on Over the Cap. I'm going to see what the Over the Cap's competitor Spot Track says here in a second. But it's healthy numbers, cap numbers. In 2025, a cap number of 16.6. His base salary is only like $1 million. There's different prorated and roster bonuses that are tied to this with some guaranteed salary. Guaranteed salary is somewhere in the neighborhood of 24.2 million. So we'll see if part of this was a salary dump by the Miami Dolphins. One of the higher paid. I don't think he'll make it to age 34 on this contract through 2028 with a 36.1 million cap hit. I don't see that.
Unlikely.
I don't see that ever happening. I'm going to see what Spot Rack has to say here, Brian, because sometimes we don't have all of the up-to-date information, and they might be guessing too at this point. We may not have all those details, although the trade, they already have Ramsey on the roster, so that's a promising sign. Let's see. They're saying it's a cap hit for the Steelers for 5.3, a base of 1.2. There's some different options and stuff there, but a 5.3 cap hit for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then the potential out, of course, is that they get completely out of this if they had the Dolphins contract. Depending on what's owed on that right now, they're showing a 12.7 dead cap. So if that's accurate, otherwise, he's owed a substantial chunk of change with that contract. I don't understand this. This reminds me of like Julio Jones signing. Was it with Tennessee where they signed him like this gigantic deal and he was like 32 years old? I'm like, he's never gonna play that out. And I've seen it happen with some other players of the same pedigree. It just makes me shake my head a little bit there. But I don't anticipate that the Steelers will. They're not obligated to pay all of this out. We'll see how much of this actually sticks. And if this has been reported the way it is, a 5.3 million cap hit for a player the caliber of a Jalen Ramsey, he still plays up to a Jalen Ramsey level. Look out. Now, we're not talking about Joey Porter leaving the field here. And one thing I think that's getting lost in this shuffle, everybody talks about Aaron Rodgers mentoring Will Howard or something like that. How about the impact of Darius Slay and Jalen Ramsey playing with Joey Porter? And some people are saying, well, the Joey regressed, this and that. Joey had one game against the Bengals where he could not keep his hands off of T. Higgins. He had a bad day in the office. And I think that happens. You're not going to be perfect all the time. I didn't have a lot of complaints with Joey Porter last year. Dante Jackson, off and on, not the most consistent player. Not terrible, but you potentially you got Ramsey. I don't know if they'll follow people, if they end up following people around, but you got Ramsey and Slay who are like goats at this position with a young Porter who could be. This is an arms race. They see the Baltimore Ravens go and get Jair Alexander. They get Jair Alexander because they have to play against the Bengals. Guess what? So do the Steelers. So when you're trying to stop the T. Higgins of the world and the Jamar Chases and everybody else that they've got with Joe Burrow at quarterback, it makes a lot of sense to me, and especially if Ramsey's going to be able to play along the line of scrimmage, they don't have to maybe do as many personnel swaps. The defense could be very strong, and then there's still some players maybe floating around out there that they could still sniff at if they feel they need another safety. But for the most part, they locked in Elliott a little longer. Elliott has played a lot of free safety in his career, so he can change up. But I think they just want guys that are versatile and just keep everybody guessing.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll buy what you just said because I just don't know. This is as we have come to sort of expect during the Omar Khan era. I don't know what the hell they're gonna do.
Yeah, right? It makes you wonder why they pushed for it. Yeah, like
they're gonna surprise us and do something that we don't expect. I don't think anybody expected them to pull this kind of a trade off. It is certainly possible that Minkah was being shopped, but I don't know that that's the case. I'm wondering if during the conversations about Jonnu Smith, they just went, "Hey, you want Ramsey? We'll take Minkah," and something just kind of clicked. I don't know how to really project what this group of admin folks with the Steelers are going to do. It is not, it's cool because it's an uncomfortable feeling, right? Anything could happen, right? We've said over and over again, TJ Watt is safe. Is TJ Watt safe? I don't know anymore. I think yes. I know they've repeatedly said they want him to end his career as a Steeler, and they didn't say the same things about Minkah. But the way that these folks operate is at a different place than the way Steelers have operated in the past, right? If in fact they get the right thing in place and they think it makes them a better team, as you said at the very beginning of the show, nobody is untouchable at this point. And that seems very clear from the way that they're operating.
Yeah, I'm looking at the safety list. If they were to add somebody, there's names, some aging ones. Justin Simmons, who's 32, last played with the Falcons. Jordan Whitehead, who was involved in a car accident, and I think it was actually his fault, and he was placed on a NFI list and no longer with the Buccaneers. He's still out there at 28 years of age. Julian Blackmon, Quandre Diggs, Jordan Poyer, who's 34. He's up there. Chuck Clark, former familiar face from the Baltimore Ravens. Kayvon Wallace, Marcus May, John Johnson, and even Tashawn Gibson, who's now 35. Von Bell, who's 31. And Ronnie Harrison at 28. So there's quite a few players who are still floating around out there at the safety position at free agency, if they didn't want to make a trade, if they want to make a signing. At this point, nothing's going to affect their compensatory formula. So it's kind of interesting, though, if they don't end up. I was looking at Ramsey and I was like, oh, well, if Ramsey ends up hitting free agency or something like that, then that would be a little different than, Minkah hitting free agency. But they've got so many picks next year, it doesn't really matter. And it would be for the following year anyways. So they could add some other guys. But aside from that, like maybe tiny bit of concern across the field in that secondary. You still got Elliott. Thornhill's a thumper and been a run stopper. Maybe he's more of a strong safety type. Ramsey, if he plays in the slot or floats. Darius Slay, Joey Porter Jr. That looks mighty good. You got Cam Hayward. He's ageless as all hell. You've got what? Pro Football Focus actually gave the Steelers the #1 ranked defensive front. And I know they're probably counting outside linebackers with that. So you got Alex Highsmith. You've got TJ Watt, who's always in the MVP conversations. Like I said, Hayward is quietly maybe the best player at his position in all of football at like 35, heading into 36 years of age. He just keeps going. Can Keanu Benton move up there? Can Derek Harmon be a guy if Benton isn't solid enough? Those are all great questions. Those are all pluses in my book. Then you look at the other linebackers, and you still have Peyton Wilson, who's there, Patrick Queen, Cole Holcomb's returning, Nick Herbig and Jack Sawyer as depth on the edges. The defense is freaking loaded. I mean, the depth in the secondary is the only concern, because I remember 2 years ago when you ended up with Mason Rudolph playing. Guess what else was happening? Trenton Thompson and Elijah Riley and who else was back there? Patrick Peterson had to play safety a little bit. So that's always concerning. They really sold high on Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think they get 2 quality players back in doing so. We'll talk about Jonnu Smith and how he fits the offense in a minute, but let's close our thoughts on the defense, man. Are you feeling as good about defense as I am?
I feel okay. I'm as I said, I'm trying to remain optimistic, but the more realistic side of me keeps going. It looks great on paper. Let's wait and see what the product looks like on the field. There's also a consistent narrative that has occurred with the secondary of the Steelers over the past few years, which is communication. And we all know that communication is much more difficult when you have a bunch of new pieces. Well, now they got a real shitload of new pieces. And so, I'm looking at it like, all right, let's wait and see. I'm cautiously optimistic that we're in a good position on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I'd like to see more out of Beanie Bishop. I'm not sure how he gets on the field some. I do want to revert back to that, though, because we were talking about, like, Aaron Rodgers and trusting wide receivers, right? And Beanie Bishop got not 1, but 2 of those balls Rodgers was attempting to throw to Garrett Wilson last year, right? So, the same trust factor with George Pickens leaving could be part of that, right? So the Steelers are looking around, and they've got DK Metcalf, big physical guy. And you're like, if you want to bully everybody on the offensive side of the ball, what are you going to do? And you still got Darnell Washington that you could throw out there. He could help if Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu, maybe on that edge just aren't as solid. But if one of those 2 guys, if both work out, great. Offensive line looks great. If one doesn't, then you could help, right? And you've got Pat Freiermuth, who's a guy who's been catching a lot of passes, a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns, capable. Now you add Jonnu Smith to this same mix. Big physical guy that could be capable of being a receiver. I just feel like in both cases with the Steelers, the sub packages aren't going to be as plentiful. They're not going to have to keep running guys on and off the field to match up with other teams, or they could leave teams guessing as to what they're doing on offense. That would be just leaving the tight ends out there. If Roman Wilson ends up panning out with his sub 4.3 speed, I believe he was in a 4.2 plus. He's part of that Michigan team that just ran the ball down your throats, and he's capable of catching the ball. We didn't see what he could do last year. DK Metcalf, part of that. The multiple tight ends, Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, the rookie, along with Jalen Warren, who loves to get physical. Provided Zach Frazier doesn't have any setbacks, and Isaac Seumalo is still the guy that he is. If Fautanu comes in there and plays really well, this is looking really, really good, because you just leave the 2 tight ends out there all the time. Is it a run? Is it a pass? We don't know necessarily. When you throw Darnell Washington out there, and surprisingly, like half the passes he caught, or whatever, 60-70% of the passes he caught last year, right, were for first downs. Number one, they can't tackle him. But, what little usage that he's gotten, still love him. He's not going anywhere. So they can really try to bully some teams, which is, I think, in the second year of an Arthur Smith system, what Arthur Smith's been looking to achieve.
Yeah, I agree with that. They definitely want to play bully ball. They want to run the ball. They want to pound the ball. They want to do play action off of that. And I think they have the moves that they are making are all targeted at getting themselves in that kind of position. You got big tight ends who are going to be physical. You've got a receiver type tight end in Freiermuth. You've got, DK as a physical receiver. Whether they add more to that receiver room or not, whether Roman Wilson is, we know he's a willing blocker. Whether he's going to be a capable blocker, we'll have to wait and see at this level. We don't know what we're going to get from him. I honestly, when you get past those 2 guys in the receiver room, I don't know what else is going to be there. Calvin Austin is not moving anybody.
No, but
off the ball.
He'll move them on their ass. They're gonna they'll trip over their own feet trying to cover him, though. So that's another thing.
Yeah, I think the real question in my mind comes to be how the marriage between Aaron Rodgers and Arthur Smith works out. Aaron has been consistently a pass happy kind of guy, wants to throw the ball, and if that becomes a problem, if there is any kind of divergence in their relationship, that's going to spell problem for the Steelers during the season. If they are on the same page and they're having success, maybe things will go the way they want them to go. I think this offense is absolutely, it's designed to be a run first, power heavy kind of offense. Whether that will be what it is, whether Mason McCormick is going to be the guard that can put them in that position, whether the offensive line gels enough to put them in those kinds of positions, whether Caleb Johnson is a running back that can take advantage of that along with Jalen Warren. All that stuff is up in the air, right? We're in that position and that point in the season where things can be made to look as rosy as you want them to be. You can project happy thoughts and unicorns and rainbows on what the season's going to look like. I'm just still not convinced, and I probably won't be one way or the other until 2 or 3 games into the season.
I hear you. Going back to Jonnu Smith, he's a little stockier of a guy, right? Listed 6'3", 248. He's capable of moving some people around. He was able to find success last year, regardless of Tua Tagovailoa being on the field or not, which is important when we're talking about the Steelers and their quarterback turmoil, right? But he's a 1 year deal. He was looking for extension. He's looking for some more money. So we're gonna get some more details on some of that as it comes along. Right now, I don't think that there's a whole lot of movement, but I am looking to see if there's any changes. His cap hit's about $4 million. He has a per game roster bonus, I believe, that factors into some of that, aside from a base salary of just about 3.4 mil. Now, I know I go back and forth with the Pro Football Focus folks, right, Brian? But Jonnu Smith was ranked 5th among their 37 eligible graded tight ends last year. Overall grade is 78.2. He was 4th in receiving yards in that same group. He was 2nd with 8 touchdowns overall. His yards per reception was only 10.1, which bounces him down to about 23rd best. But again, this isn't his first rodeo with Arthur Smith. This will be the 3rd team he's played for under Arthur Smith. It really started to break out those final years in Tennessee, where the final year that he was there in Tennessee, caught 41 passes for 448 yards and 8 touchdowns. Kind of not the same kind of production he just had in Miami with Mike McDaniel and that offense. But in Atlanta, Arthur Smith's final year there, he was still outplaying Kyle Pitts somehow. Kyle Pitts has just never really popped off the page. And speaking of which, I think that's who the Dolphins are going to be looking. There's already like speculation the Dolphins are looking for somebody to replace Smith now. I think Kyle Pitts might be on that block, but aside from that, non-Steelers tidbit: 50 receptions with the Falcons for 582 yards, only 3 touchdowns. However, very bad quarterback play. If you remember the kid from University of Cincinnati, what was it, Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke? Yep. They had some really bad quarterback play there. Last season, though, with the Dolphins, he was targeted 111 times, caught 88 passes, 884 yards, and 8 touchdowns. If you have 8s in your lottery numbers for for tonight, you should probably go 8s and 9s seem to be what might be best here. We'll see what number he ends up wearing in Pittsburgh. But I am excited about this because we were speculating before as to whether or not they would make this move and what it would mean. And I think, you don't always see a lot of the tight end usage. Maybe the Steelers come up with something in these copycat leagues, like the NFL, all these copycat teams. Maybe they come up with something a little unique here. When you come up with something unique, it means it's a little bit harder to defend. Everybody's trying to defend. They are trying to defend Travis Kelce, but are they defending tight ends as much in Buffalo? Are they defending them maybe with Baltimore? So aside from that, it's like Gesicki was in Cincinnati last year, had a decent year as a tight end, but there's usually not multiple tight ends that you're looking at in the overall picture. So arms race. Does it make them better or worse? Man, I could see both sides of this. It's going to be tough. Yeah. Time will tell. I don't think that they got worse necessarily. I think that at the very least, that floor is still the same floor.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, right? There's the chance that they got better. There's a chance that they got worse. It really depends on what the balance is and the play coming from Ramsey and whoever is taking over for Minkah, right? Minkah goes to Miami and has an all-pro season and goes back to being the Minkah that we were used to. Everybody's going to second guess this. I don't think that'll happen. But if it did, everybody will second guess this trade and go, oh my God. But the problem with that, it will still be the same problem that it always is. It's a different context. It's a different system. The fact that he may have excelled just means that they put him in positions that were better than the positions he was going to be put in here. Different style of play. Who knows? I think it's fair to say that the calibers of players are both very similar. They both have been all-pro level players, slightly different position. Whether they are better or worse, we'll have to wait and see as the season unfolds.
Well, I know for sure I'm excited to see this unfold. Training camp got a lot more exciting. Backs on backers is going to be a lot of excitement. We're going to see how feisty Jalen Ramsey is. Let's talk about just the personalities in this locker room now. Mike Tomlin's got Aaron Rodgers. You've got Jalen Ramsey, who's been around. And now Ramsey's an interesting guy because he seems to be pretty straight and narrow, right? But he's bounced around a lot of teams. He's gotten, I want out of here and stuff like that. So you've had some of that too. Darius Slay certainly has backed up his smack talk. You got Joey Porter. This could be a really nasty defense. And just bouncing back to your original comments at the beginning of the show, TJ Watt. I love how you get something like somebody asked Mike Tomlin or Omar Khan, and they've already kind of maybe Art Rooney to second, and they've already kind of let the cat out of the bag. Both sides are talking. Something's probably going to happen around training camp. But all of a sudden, it's like today you got somebody like Schefter putting out there, well, TJ Watt's unhappy with his contract. Yeah, because there's 1 year left on it, and he's watching everybody else getting, $40 million a year like a Myles Garrett now. But does it mean he's necessarily unhappy? It sounds like it sounds more like the agent pushing for something here. But we know
100%.
Those deals happen. They're going to happen in Latrobe. It's going to happen in about a month. They're, TJ, if you don't see him the first few days or week or whatever, you might not have anyways. They're just going to take it a little easier with him. He's 30, but it doesn't mean he's going on the shelf anytime soon either. And this is a team that can't win unless that guy's on the field. So I do think that deal ends up happening. I don't think he goes anywhere. But like you said, never say never. Just Minkah Fitzpatrick already out the door. But would you get enough for TJ Watt with 1 year left on his contract to make it worthwhile? I don't know.
Well, that's what I mean. It has to be the right situation. I think it's unlikely. I think TJ stays. There is still the desire to have people end their career, be one helmet kind of guys who were drafted and finished their career with the same team. I'm sure TJ wants to be that kind of guy. I know that the Steelers would like him to be that kind of guy. It all just depends on how it balances out. We'll have to wait and see. All right, bonus question for the 2%ers. How many different color cans of sparkling water did I drink during the show?
Oh man. Dude, I don't know how big your bladder is. I'd say 4.
No, well, I'm not going to answer the question. It's a bonus question,
it's a bonus
and we'll
question.
answer it next. It's a bonus question. If we'll see if anybody comments about it, and if they do, then we'll mention it in the next show.
Yeah, I'm telling you, dude. So once again, Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, a 2027 7th round pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick, a 2027 5th round pick. Just another big deal. Steelers shipped away George Pickens a few weeks ago. They went and got DK Metcalf at the beginning of free agency. They waited around and finally got Aaron Rodgers. This is a wild ride. I'm not used to seeing this. Dare I say, it feels very much, I know you're not a baseball guy, I'm not the biggest baseball guy, but it's like what the New York Yankees do. They go out and trade and they buy players in order to make a run for a championship. And maybe a lot of times we tie those hopes and dreams to maybe a quarterback, for example. Oh, well, this is this quarterback, Big Ben's last ride. Got to give him everybody you can in order to maybe get Ben another championship. This feels like it's for Hayward. It feels like it's for TJ. Very specifically these guys, well, you have these pieces still on your defense. Everybody's been just saying all kind of inflammatory things about the Steelers. Why waste these guys? Doesn't look like they're wasting anything. So it's going to be.
They're definitely not trying to. They're trying not to. I mean, as I said, I've said this from the beginning of the offseason. I view this team as not being a championship caliber team. None of this has changed my mind. But last episode, I also said the same thing. If this defense were to play lights out, that's just a different story, right? And they are definitely reshaping this defense to be what they want it to be. Mean, nasty, physical, run jamming, run stopping defense, a defense that can get after the quarterback. That's what they want to be. That's the identity they want to be. They want to dominate physically the other team. And if they can be that kind of defense, and that defense can limit scoring and limit scoring of the teams that have been proven to be their kryptonite, like the Chiefs, like the Bengals, like the Ravens, like the Bills. If they can start to beat those teams and hold them down to under 20 points a game, then you don't need your offense to be of the same caliber, right? Because the other defenses aren't going to be. So if you can win a war of attrition in that way, who knows? Maybe they can go all the way. I'm not convinced, but I can at least see the road they are trying to take to get there. And I understand that. So they are absolutely trying to do the things that they feel are necessary to move the team in the direction that they always intend to go in, which is, Super Bowl or nothing every year. It's not about trying to win a playoff game. It's not about trying to advance to a later round. They want to win championships. That's what they want to do. And anything else is considered a failure. So they're making the moves that they can make and that they think are necessary to go that route. Whether it will succeed or not is always a crapshoot. You just have to wait and see.
Yeah, well, it's definitely an arms race, not only in the AFC North, but in the AFC in general. This, again, it's not Kevin Colbert. Kevin Colbert would have been content with what they've already done, whether they made that DK Metcalf trade or not, or just hung on to Pickens until his contract expires by hook or by crook if he costs you games or not. So it's refreshing. It's also like, good luck trying to figure out whatever their plans are, but certainly feels as though that the Steelers are definitely in. For everyone who thought they were just going to lay down and try and tank and get a number 1 overall pick for a future quarterback, that's about the only spot, the future, that seems scary. But now I'm more set in that 2025 will not be a throwaway year with all of these moves. They're going to be as competitive as they ever have been. And, for as much as people give Mike Tomlin flack for mediocrity and no losing seasons, there's only one game that Mike Tomlin's ever coached that has not meant anything when it comes to any kind of postseason or standings or had any true meaning or value as to whether they played. They could have just sat whoever they wanted and, their seasons folded up. It's only happened once in 18 years under Mike Tomlin. That speaks volumes. I think we're going to see a lot of the same with that this upcoming season. And then with 12 draft picks, who knows what they do next year? Because they still got the draft picks for the following years after that, and who knows? But
I'm flat out terrified of what mock draft insanity is going to look like in 2026. I may have the whole first round in the Steelers book by the time I'm done. I just don't know what the hell that's going to look like.
That's going to be a lot of fun. Well, Brian, thanks for joining me, my friend. It's good that we had actual stuff to talk about. Not that we didn't want to talk about some other fun things, but wow, what a morning, man. I'm out of breath. It's I'm trying to process all of it. Half of my closet, half of my jerseys go like, the Goodwill now, I think. So I don't get rid of any of them, actually, for the most part.
Neither do I. I think there's, I don't know, 25, 26, 27 of them over there. And they're not, I just stopped wearing them. Like, I still got my Le'Veon Bell jersey. I still got my Antonio Big Checks, Mr.
I've got
Brown
several of
jerseys.
those. Several of those.
So I don't get rid of them. I just don't wear them anymore.
I may just take the Pickett nameplate off of my number 8 and then just not replace it, and I could just be in protest.
I'll be honest, since I bought that one from China, I actually gave that one away to somebody and just went, But you know what? To be fair, I gave it away before then because I just was like, I don't know why I bought this. I don't really want this jersey.
I've got a couple of those too. I surprisingly didn't add much last year, but we'll get into that. What are the best bets? Because we talk about that every year. There might not be good bets anymore. Your best bet might be only spending $25 and getting one from China versus $150.
With the price that jerseys go up to nowadays, man. I don't know. And the way that they are dealing, I'm just telling you, I don't know. You just have to accept that you're outputting the money for whatever if you can afford it, hey, just accept that that's the expense you're paying to get the jersey that you want. And, next season it might not be valid.
I've got two that are going into, the deep part of the closet with Russell Wilson and now Minkah Fitzpatrick, both of the.
Well, I was never going to buy a Russell Wilson jersey.
Yeah, it was gifted to me.
You knew that one was going the next season. He was never coming back.
That was gifted to me. But when we had this same conversation, I'm telling a significant other, hey, what's a good idea on what to buy? And you say, well, Minkah's under contract for a while, and I don't see him going anywhere. And whew, that stings a little bit. But
that didn't happen.
Did not happen. So, folks, that'll do it for us for this show. Thank you for tuning in, watching, or listening wherever you may be at. Next day, video available on one of our Spotify feeds. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, leave a rating or review. My name's Joe. His name's Brian. As we always close out this show, we like to tell our watchers and our listeners out there, we hope you be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
And tell me if the beard's too long.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.